Greetings, fellow villagers. Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of a new series covering Foundation. If you'd like to skip the game's overview or the setup of this series, please use YouTube chapters. Foundation is a gridless, laid-back medieval city builder with a focus on organic development, monument construction, and resource management. The culmination of the game mechanics result in gorgeous and realistic-looking medieval townships and cities, which feel alive, bustling, and rewarding once you manage to build one. I am going to be playing the 19790918 branch, meaning it is just before the full release. The goal of the series is to showcase the game and its mechanics. The map type will be voted by you guys, and the faction to include will be voted by you as well. I'll be running through the in-game tutorial and then letting you guys sort of determine my goals. So let's get started. The first poll, as I literally just mentioned, is the map type. So here it is, polls above my head. I'm going to give you 1 minute. And there are three sort of default choices. There is coastal, there is river or fluvial, and then there's hills, which usually has a pond. And you can obviously change the sliders here. So if you want less ocean or more ocean, there is a lot of control that you're given in terms of in terms of map design. But I'll have you guys decide on the map type, and it does look like river is winning. So I'm gonna try to come up with a river that I like. Words of advice. It's not strictly necessary for everything to be flat, but it certainly helps. So I'm going to lower hills a bit. And honestly, this map seems fine to me, so we'll pick it. 2 islands, maybe 1 island. No, I'll go with 2. Yeah, all right. I like it. I like it. I'm not using any mods, so we'll skip that section and we'll jump right in. A new beginning. After a long journey throughout the realm, your people finally reach new lands. Your lands. Territories you were asked to settle for reasons of your own. Your villagers await your command. They are eager to advise your first steps if you require so. So this is the in-game tutorial, and as I said, I'm going to be playing through it. I have played this game before, but it helps to show the in-game tutorial so that you guys can learn alongside me playing. So I'm going to hit let me hear your advice, and advice, your first territory. The first piece of advice comes from the eldest of your villagers. He suggests you consider basic needs when settling down, berries for your people, stone and wood for construction efforts. The rest will find its way. Let's put this advice into practice. So at the start of the game, you are given the choice of territories to settle, and if you go with the tutorial, it's going to direct you to territories that have both berries, which allows you to feed yourself early on, and stone, which is a required building material. I would also advise picking a zone with stone and berries. One thing to note is that later on in the game, and we'll probably get to this point, these sort of like mountainous areas can be very useful for iron and things like that. So settling near the larger stones is not strictly necessary because you can expand your territories out to them, but it is advisable. Some other things to consider. If you have fish, which is denoted by this sort of like, bubbling, jumping fish icon, that can be pretty useful in order to supplement your diets early on as well. And then lots of forests can be used for hunting. So if you are picking a starting tile and it's mostly grassland, you're going to struggle a little bit hunting. So to that end, taking a look at all my options, I like this option because it's adjacent to the stone. We can also, you guys chose river. Like some of these options back here are kind of great. Like this one is surrounded by mineable resources. It would be pretty terrific. Ooh, you know what? Right here is pretty nice. It's very close to mining resources. It has a lot of forests. It is nearly on the waterfront. So if you are picking a starting tile and it's mostly grassland, you're going to struggle a little bit hunting. So to that end, taking a look at all my options, I like this option because it's adjacent to the stone. We can also, you guys chose river. Like some of these options back here are kind of great. Like this one is surrounded by mineable resources. It would be pretty terrific. Ooh, you know what? Right here is pretty nice. It's very close to mining resources. It has a lot of forests. The other thing I was considering is putting like the Lord's Manor Hall on an island, meaning settling not on an island. So maybe I will settle this spot and just hope that there's good strategic resources in this stone. So I'm just going to make a choice here and done. All right. On the bottom left, you can see that the advice for choosing territories is completed. And then there's this new advice, placing your village center. Now that I've established where to settle, I have to establish the village center. So the village center is sort of like where all of your resources will initially get dropped down. It doesn't necessarily need to be the heart of where you're living. And then pretty early on, you're given the option to expand your territory. So it's not a really big deal to decide exactly where to place this. But we're going to drop this sort of equidistant between the berries and the stone. And just hit build. All right, next up. As soon as we unpause, it's going to direct us in the tutorial. Organizing work. The second piece of advice comes from a young, enterprising villager. Rather than simply letting everyone fend for themselves, she suggests you organize laborers into workplaces. Builders in their workshop, woodcutters at their lumber camp, berry gatherers at their hut, and so on. Let's put this into practice. So the first thing it wants me to do is to place a builder's workshop. And the builder's workshop is relatively unique compared to a lot of the other structures that you build, in that it places without having to be built itself. And then what to look at. So the symbols here, left click places it down, and you can always move it again afterwards. And then left click drag. Sometimes some buildings can have vertical elements to have them be taller, like towers and the like. You can right click when you're holding it to delete it if you want. Let's put it back down. You can control click for and shift click for horizontal movement or vertical movement. So I just placed it there. The other thing I wanted to note, which I didn't say in time, is the icons here. So the green icons is where people enter the building from, and the white icons are attachment points for additional sections. So for instance, a builder's hut can include a sculptor later on. So our builder has a road here. That's fine. I didn't actually mean to place it, but it's a little late for that, but I am not fretted. Once you click on it, you can name it if you want it to give it a specific name, which is useful if you have like a sprawling city with like individual little villages. And then if you click this, it will just assign random serfs, which is the lowest tier type of citizen that you get, as to be builders. So I just assign them as builders, and up here in the top, we have a population of 10 serfs, and 7 of them are unemployed, so 3 of them are in the builder's hut. You can also click here and go to buildings, or just hit F2, and we can see the builder's workshop, 3 out of 3 builders, and is working fine. Cheers. All right, next, place a lumber camp. So a lumber camp cuts down trees, surprise, surprise. Now, there are some things to note prior. One is, we can't see the overlay right now, but wooded areas are also where you hunt boars for meat. So I can't see where we hunt boars for meat. What I'm planning on doing, for now at least, is to cut all of the trees in my starting territory down to make room for expansion. So in order to do that, I go to the painting tool and I paint extraction. What extraction means is it's for raw resources, whether it's trees or other raw resources you might have, to cut them down. And then if we pin this, we can see placing the lumber camp. So the lumber camp is where they cut down trees, and I think I want the lumber camp over this way because I'll probably annex this swath of territory at some point and treat that as my source of timber. And we'll plop it right here at the edge. And then what's going to happen is my 3 serfs that are set up to be builders will then get called to build this for 2 tools. And we started, as you can see at the top of the screen, we start off with a whole bunch of tools. but tools are going to be one of those resources we will have to regularly buy. It's also worth noting that where they walk is desire path. There are ways to sort of like force desire paths in the game, but generally speaking, you don't actually make the paths, the villagers do, which is pretty unique, very organic. So now the builder has built the lumber camp, and I'll click this, 1, 2, 3, and assigning all 3 woodcutters to the lumber camp. And what they're going to do is just start cutting the wood within the extraction zone. So if you left click, you add to the extraction zone, right click is remove. So if I wanted to keep a patch of woods, I could. And then you can use L and P to shrink and grow the zone so that you can really decide exactly where you want to set it up. Is wood renewable? Yes, there is a forester. And I've just passed the defining extraction zone. So painting tool allows you to use a parcel of land for different purposes, like woodcutting, farming, housing, etc. Got it. Gathering food. So the next up is to start gathering food. And here is the reforestation painter. So having done what we just did, we gain access to the forester. I'm not going to build the forester just yet, but if we wanted to reforest, the extraction and reforesting can be layered on top of one another so that you can reforest and extract from the same spot, whereas Forbidden Land forbids both of those activities. So Forbidden Land is land that only the Lord owns, which indicates that it can't be used for extraction or reforesting. But I'm just going to reset everything back the way it was. So yes, it's entirely possible to have multiple painting layers on top of one another, and pretty common as well. So the next thing it wants me to do is set up a gathering hut. And a gathering hut gathers berries, and things like berries and stone are infinite, but you can't have infinite collectors. And I'm going to set this up like that. So meaning that like a hut full of serfs employed to gather the berries covers all of the gathering spots. So having more gatherers around one berry bush isn't going to yield you all that much more resources. And here you go. You can see the woodcutters already starting to woodcut. It's also worth noting that the individual serfs have names, they have levels, needs, services, happiness, etc. And as they work the woodcutting jobs, they will become better at it. As you can see, he's level 1, and cutting down his first tree got him a little bit of experience. So constantly shifting your character or your citizens around to different jobs is a bit of a disadvantage because they won't skill up the way you might want them to. And 3 foragers in to the gathering hut so that we start gathering food. There we go. Perfect. All right. That means as soon as our first gatherers actually gather their first berries, we will then advance to the next section of the tutorial. Here they are. Level 1 forager, starting to level up. I do plan on raffling off some of the characters that we have, but probably not just the random serfs. Probably only the most important characters in this city, like soldiers or bailiffs or, you know, important characters. All right, advice, needs and happiness. Now that you have organized your laborers, you can use their needs and happiness. Make sure to have access to fresh water and housing. As for food, you will first need to have people to store and distribute the berries that they've collected. From there, your village will have everything to welcome its first wave of immigrants. So, what will end up happening is we don't have a place to store the berries. You can store them in the gathering hut, but ideally you want to store them in a granary. So granary is for food, and then there's something called a warehouse for goods. And in this case, I really don't want the granary all that far from the gathering hut. So I'm just going to place it right there. And then we'll assign a transporter to the gathering hut to collect the berries and put it into the granary. And it's, once the granary is built, I'll get a little bit deeper into the details about, sort of like best practice type stuff. But we still have one more village unemployed. These other villagers here, like this woodcutter and that woodcutter, have jobs for woodcutting, but they aren't currently working. Because they're lazy. Or, more specifically, actually, I don't even know why they're not working. I am not going to worry about it at the moment. Could be because there's no... Oh no, they're working. They were just taking a break. Now, if you want to prioritize a specific construction project, you can click Prioritize Construction, and it will direct your builders to prioritize that over other building projects. I've also sped time up a little bit, because time at 1x is really slow in this game. I'd rather have it a mite bit faster. Come on, builders. Go do your work. Oh, in this case, I think what's going on is, and I hadn't realized, we don't have stone. So until I have stone, I really can't build a granary. So let's go ahead and plop a stone cutter camp right next to the stone node, so that we can actually start building the granary, because the granary requires 5 stone, and I have 0. So, chicken and the egg and all. And in this case, I am going to fire... who's the one actually doing the work? Ursilda? Okay, I'm going to fire the other 2. And have them be stone miners once this is built. There we go. So now everyone left is a stone miner. I'm not really sure why they are saying there's no resources to extract. Oh, weird. I must have misclicked right click and told them not to extract the stone that they were sitting on top of. So yeah, it wasn't a bug. I just had misclicked at some point. One important keystroke that you will find is every time you open something, it opens up the overlays for it, and backspace or delete clears it. It's also a button here. It's something I ran into when I started playing, where like my screen was completely filling up with like information garbage, and I was like having to click these X's. Yeah, don't bother. Just use the backspace. It's so much faster. Alright, so now we have the stone miners mining up stone, and the stone being delivered to the granary so that I can hire a transporter and fulfill the next stage of the advice, accumulating food. Yeah, it was a finger error, exactly. Pretty innocent finger error. Now, in this case, the workers are just taking a break, eating and whatnot. But pretty soon, this gathering hut is going to be filled with berries, and they will be unable to work until we get the granary up. So there's really a finite amount of storage that you have for certain items, and we're about to hit it. We're 42 out of 50, so all the more reason to get this granary going. Alright, now that we have a granary, I am going to fire one of the miners, Paret, and then hire them as a transporter. And then the way this works is that the granary has total capacity, and I'm going to specifically say this is going to be the berry granary. And I'm going to say everything inside this granary should be berries. So here's the buttons. We can stock maximum. We can refuse a certain object. So refusing is really useful if you want to start storing materials elsewhere. So let's say we start brewing the berries into liquor. I might want to change where my berry stockpile is elsewhere where the brewery is. So that's when you would click this, because if you destroy your granary that has berries in it, everything, all of its contents gets destroyed as well. So you can say refuse or empty stock, and that will help to tell your transporters to send your goods elsewhere. And then each one of these selections is 100 of the capacity. So if I had like berries, and wheat, we could store 300 berries and 100 wheat. So in some cases, you might want to completely fill up one granary of all the same stuff. And because this granary is literally right next to the berry bushes, I'm just calling it the berry granary, and I intend to completely fill it up with berries. And then because there is a very short run between the berry gatherer and the berry granary, I really only need one transporter. I don't need multiple. Alright, so the next part of the tutorial, defining residences. It wants me to first buy a new territory and then paint a residential zone. So the territories is this icon here, the flag, and we can choose which territory to expand into. Now, I had mentioned the importance of the mining area, but I might actually pick this spot. It's closer to the mine, but it has a nice open area for building. So we just bought a new zone, and it wants me to paint a residential zone. So in this game, you don't build houses, you just zone for houses, like SimCity, let's say. So if I paint a residential zone, I don't want it too close to the stone over there, because the stone over there is where we're going to do mining, and that is not a beautiful thing to live near. So I want my residential zone to be roughly maybe here, far enough away from the mines that we won't get the malices of being near the mines, but close enough to the industries. Because another thing is people want to live close to where they work. So if I, for instance, was trying to exploit this mine over here, I would need houses close by, or otherwise the miners that work out here would be homeless, which is really bad for villager happiness. So now that we've defined a home zone, and in this tutorial I'm starting to get coin as a result of fulfilling its completions, which means I'm actually over my coffer percent at the moment, which is kind of funny. So what will end up happening is the zoning I have for houses will start to be filled up with people wanting to move to the area. And the next tutorial section is to build a well, because people want to live near sources of water. So I'm going to build a well, sort of in the middle of where the village center is going to be. And then I'm going to build a market. So what the market does is it allows you to take food from a granary or from storage and sell it close to where the houses are. And people like to live near markets to be able to feed themselves. The initial stake that you put down is just where the center of the market's going to be. It's not actually the building itself, as I will explain soon. So I can literally put the stake like next to the well. That's fine. And then what I want to do is build the market itself. So what I'm planning on doing is having the town square sort of centered around this well. So I'm going to put a market facing the well. And to that end, I think it would be wise for me to disallow the immediate vicinity from residences, so that I don't have to ever displace people from their homes. And the way this market works is you can put the booth down, and there's 3 different types of booths. There's food stalls, there's goods stalls, and luxury stalls. And there's multiple types of food, but initially, obviously, it's going to be berries. And then the tent itself adds the storage capacity to the stall. And that's all it needs to be. You can build multiple stalls, but we only have one type of food, so there's really no point to do that at the moment. And hit build. And just wait for the builders to build that. And already, as you can see right here, there's a house coming in. I didn't build it myself, I just zoned for it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize the well and the market over the house. I want the well and the market first. And the intention is to eventually buy this swath of land here once I have some tax revenue. Because if I bought it right now, we would have to pay upkeep and building the town center sort of in this area here. But yeah, you can see all the houses cropping up, which is great. And here, this berry granary has 63 or 66 berries in it, you know, so you can see it has been working. And the desire path is already getting painted, which is nice. Yes, houses auto-place, but only in the zones that you allow. So if you don't zone them, they won't get placed. So the lumber camp at this moment is completely full of wood. And what I'm going to do, which is a little cheesy, but it works, is leave the lumber camp in place and build another one here so that I can start clearing trees around my village center. And the woodcutters can start acquiring additional wood beyond the capacity of this lumber camp, because this lumber camp is full. Because at the moment, I don't have the research for warehouses. I will get them eventually, but because I don't have the resource for warehouses, the woodcutters here aren't actually woodcutting. They're just standing around the village center with twiddling their thumbs. There's the well. And the well has infinite water. And there are some businesses, like bakeries, for instance, that will require water. But generally speaking, as long as there's a well near the houses, the water needs for your villagers will be fulfilled. So here, as you can see, Patricia walking up to the well and drawing water to quenching her thirst, which then helps to fulfill her happiness. So you can see there's water, housing, and food, and service for serfs. And no, people won't naturally path through the forests. Not unless you cut a path yourself, which is entirely possible. You could set up an extraction zone, a thin one, to cut through the forest, to have forest paths if you want. The game has like an extraordinary level of flexibility when it comes to, you know, how you want to lay things out. And next up, we're going to get the markets going so that people can start feeding themselves. Pretty soon, the stonecutter camp, I suspect, will be completely full of stone as well. You know, for now, all of the woodcutters that aren't doing anything will just cut stone until the woodcutter camp is built. That seems pretty reasonable. So the market itself is built. Not the tent, which adds capacity, but that's fine. A total capacity of 10 is okay. We can raise it up to 30. So, in fact, one of those miners going to be hired as a market tender, and then selecting the berries as a resource to sell. And what they'll do, the market tender will go grab berries from the granary, bring them over to the market, and sell them to the villagers to fulfill their food needs. Omri, thank you for the resub. And, doing them too. I missed that. Cheers. Here comes the tent. Once the tent's made, you'll see the total capacity here. And I know it's in small text font. Now it's 0 out of 30. And the market tender, Estonot, is Tending market. He is grabbing berries, and he just delivered them. Oh, actually, I didn't see him deliver. Okay, so there we go. Next up, encouraging immigration. Assign a job to all my villagers, because unemployed villagers discourages immigration, and raise village happiness to 75. Got it. So most of what they're unhappy about is going to be, at this point, homelessness, because they are starting to fulfill their food needs. Now, one food need for a serf is enough, as you can see. It adds 50% of their happiness. So as soon as their housing is fulfilled, I will hit that 75 mark. So basically, all I need to do is to build houses for all of the villagers. And to that end, it's going to be much faster to do that if I take more miners, 1 and 2, off of the mining camp and put them as builders. So I have 3 builders working towards this task. Because there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses queued up to be built, and the more builders we have, the faster that gets done. The other thing, for now I'm going to remove one of the gatherers and put them as a woodcutter over here, and then remove one more miner and put them as a woodcutter. We have very finite labor pool at the moment, so I'm just moving people where I think I need them. About immigration. So houses have a few different requirements. It wants to be in a desirable neighborhood. So let's open up some of the visibility overlays. So undesirable neighborhoods would be near the mining camp, near the lumber camp, near the other lumber camp. Of course, this lumber camp is temporary, just to clear out the woods around this area. Ideally, it wants to be a beautiful area. And then the last is to have a commoner, not a serf. And we'll get into that in a little bit later. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So about that, beautification is one of those things that we'll unlock soon. And we might want to consider adding beautification things to this area so that the houses are even nicer by default. But at this point, as you can see in the top, I have a happiness of 50%, which means every single serf in my village has fulfilled their food needs and water needs. So now all we need is the housing needs, which requires 10 wood per house. And all of these houses have 2 occupants, so as soon as they're all built, everyone will have a home. And this is what they look like. Now, in this case, if I want to preserve the desire path will eventually recorrect itself if they continually walk around a certain terrain blocker. You'll see the desire path shift. I mean, you can already start to see it where the grass regrew here, and the desire path got pushed where the fence sort of forced them around. And the same will be true over here over time. So you can sort of fiddle with it. If you wanted to fiddle with it, what you could do is you could have a residential zone, shrink this down, and like remove the desire path that is already in. But what's going to end up happening is it will dehome the 2 people living here. As you can see, the icon above their houses are like, hey, you're essentially eminent domain kicking them out. And I don't really want to do that. I'm fine with them living... I kind of want to embrace the sort of like organic nature of the game, so I'm totally okay with the houses, you know, nudging things around. As I'm sure that would happen really early on in a medieval village. You don't have like a civil engineer planning out everything. It's just kind of like throwing houses together around a well, which is exactly what this is. So I think it represents reality pretty well. But the game is warning me that the house would be destroyed if I left it zone blocked as it was. And one more home and we're done. Organic growth looks so much nicer. Yeah, I agree. I think this game has one of the best design mechanics of all of the city builders I've ever played. Without exaggeration. The gridless, freeform, organic nature of this game is really great. And I haven't even shown you the best parts of it. We'll get there, of course. So now everyone has a home. And as you can see here, you can track individual happiness. So the last 2 people, which is Estenaut and Perret, were the last home built, and soon that will update. It will bring them up to 75 and will start attracting immigrants. So this is obviously just an average happiness, but each individual person has their own happiness levels. So if in the case that you have a few people that are incredibly unhappy, you can always click on them specifically and see what needs aren't being met. Often what the case will be is they won't have available housing near where they work, or they don't have food, or one of their services aren't being met. I'm definitely in a net positive of berries. We can see what's in the stalls, storage, output, etc. There we go. So, encouraging immigration is done. So the way immigration is encouraged, it's up here, is immigration is a mix of happiness and unemployment, or employment, to derive a final number, which is how often and how many immigrants you are to expect. Advice: profiting from trade. A business-minded villager suggests that you establish a trade route with your closest neighbor, Northbury. This will let you sell resources for profit and buy the ones you can't produce. You should start with planks since Northbury needs those. So let's get into that. The first thing it wants me to do is to build a warehouse and to assign planks to the warehouse. So the warehouse itself, where is it? That's weird. I think having done this before, I know that I need a sawmill first, because warehouses are made with there we go, with cut logs. So the plan is to maybe treat this area eventually as my the forest in which I am careful about regrowth. So I'm going to put a sawmill like directly next to the initial lumber camp and build it there. And here is immigrants. So here's the immigration number. Immigration is high, happiness is average, employment is high, and they come every 5 days. And in order to accept them, I just click. That's it. So they're initially obviously going to be homeless, and I want to put them to work. So I'm going to put one of them in this woodcutter and the other in this miner. Yeah, nothing in this game is square. Very much by design. They designed it in a way that is very organic and laid out sort of naturally, and I really like that. So everything, because like, it's only really in modern times that like square grids have been a thing, and that's mostly just for the benefit of like cars. Having grown up in Boston, which was a pre-car city, like the roads there are not gridded at all. Not like they are in like Chicago, where they're all like north, south, east, west. Like Boston is squiggly lines everywhere because it was like the age of horses and horse and buggies. And it's impossible to navigate, but it looks a lot more organic as a result. So here we go, a sawmill coming up. And we should see, and there it is, another house being ordered for the 2 new immigrants. At this point, I think I want my woodcutters to cut the wood in this area first. So I'm going to remove the eastern section from the extraction zone so that this cluster of trees gets cut. It's also worth noting that certain buildings have maintenance cost, like this sawmill or this berry granary. Not all do. So the gathering hut, for instance, does not, but the sawmill and granary does. And as your technological level increases and buildings become more complex and more important, they will have higher maintenance costs, which should be accounted for carefully. So now that sawmill is done, we're going to want some people working in it. So I'm going to go down to our building camp, fire 2 of them, because I don't have a lot to build right now, and hire 2 carpenters. So the carpenters will grab wood, turn them into planks, and in order to, well, let's name the village. My village is Yodaville, right, bud? And the Lord is Yoda. In order to establish a trade route, we go to F3, or trade routes, and to establish a trade route with Northbury, I need 20 planks in storage. And you can see the other ones. Davenport, you need 20 bread. Middle, you would need 20 clothing. And Kinstone Abbey, you would need 20 Bibles or whatever. Monastery books. So we're not going to be able to do that until we actually have a warehouse to put the planks into storage. Because the storage is inside of like a gathering hut or a lumber camp doesn't count towards that total. So even if our carpenters cut 20 planks and put them in the sawmill, they're not going to count towards being able to unlock a trade route. And I just hired on 2 more immigrants. And the last set of immigrants already have their house built. Thank you for tuning in to Foundation, which originally streamed live on Twitch January 29th. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, Rhadamant.com has a link to it, as does the description of this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream. Farewell, my fellow villagers.